conclusion, so nothing new here, right? It's just in response to growth. We have to build a substation. I don't want to reiterate any of the points that we've already talked about. Tried to work closely with the city staff. Listen to feedback on how we got to where we're at today. I hope you guys take that into consideration and just understand that we're trying to work with you, we're trying to work with the members, we're trying to work with residents with the limitations we have. At the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. And power quality, reliability at the end of the day is our obligation. We have to provide service. We can't just let power be intermittent. So we have to make decisions like this. We have to move forward. And I hope you guys can understand and appreciate that. And I'll open it up to questions back to me based off of this if you have any further follow-ups, want any further clarifications, or if I wasn't clear on anything.
Anything else for the applicant? Yeah, I'm good.
You good, Jeremy? No. I think we're good.
Any questions for legal?
I don't really care who gets it. We live on Markham Road, and it's a mile down the road. I'm Dwight Benson on 20205 Markham Road. And right now I sit and listen to this song and dance with Jen. Nobody knew this was going up here until 2 weeks ago, before anything started spreading out at all. So they never went and talked to anybody and said, we're going to be doing this, how will it affect you? Well, in the first place, I live on Markham Road. That turnoff in that corner, they've already tried to put a four-way lights up there. Well, they're running roads down that with their trucks. That's going to go right past our place. Don't tell me it's going down 116 because we got semis coming down 116 or Markham Road. So they're going to be hitting roads up there. There's going to be all kinds of noise in that corner up there, just from traffic. Big trucks, their trucks are going to be coming down our road, and that's all they care about. They didn't come and talk to anybody. If they did, they didn't hit our place or anybody on that road.
Gotcha.
So I think their song and dance, this eminent domain, you go up the Alba Lake and talk to the farmers up there when 94 went through and eminent domain went through up there, they just went right through their fields. And the only lucky heads, if you were able to get across the road to get to your land, or else you didn't get to it. That's what eminent domain does.
Yep.
So I guess.
Appreciate
I guess I don't like the way we were treated.
Understood.
We weren't swore at or anything like that, but nobody told us about it.
Well, I hope no one ever swore because I wasn't witness to anything of that nature.
So I think now the council's just going to discuss it. So
Thanks.
thank you
Very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so kind of directing us towards the resolution we have. Are there any specific changes? I'm thinking yes, there are, that we want to make to the resolution, kind of given the feedback we've gotten from John, or just kind of some.
Mr. Mayor, do we have, am I asking too much to recommend to send this back to the planning commission for their input on this, now that things are done?
That's a good question. I think we certainly could send it back. We generally haven't
Yep.
done.
I'm
we
just,
haven't done that.
I'm asking, I know and I understand
There's
it.
any reason we couldn't.
Correct. You have to comply with the deadline, which,
Yes.
as Mr. Shea indicated, was the end of May.
Yep.
May 31st.
What are you hoping to get out of going back to the planning commission?
What I saw was 5 people wanting to have input if this had to go there, which is kind of the way this has turned out. They would like input. In the past, when I was on the planning commission and things would come to us, and I just see us, this group has changed so much that I'd like to give the opportunity to planning, but if I'm the only one, I understand. I think I know where this is going, but Jeremy brought up, Commissioner Wu, her thoughts and ideas on screening and those kind of things. I think Chair Jacobs had some thoughts in it, and it was just kind of stifled and stopped and shut down. Mr. Mayor, you were there also. It was a group that basically felt and thought it wasn't ready to come to them for information, and they turned, and all 5 denied based off of not believing it was ready. Again, I'm just one person, but I want to give them that. Mr. Chair, Commissioner, Chair Jacobs of the Planning Commission had his hand up. I don't know
Oh, yeah.
if you want to listen to him,
Sure.
Mayor McGee, or not.
Of course.
To a fair extent, Councilor Varenkamp is correct. We were in a discussion about some of the issues related to landscaping, and after listening to, let me finish. So, we didn't make any full recommendations before the denial, or the recommendation to deny. So, if we had another swing at that, we'd give it a full, robust debate. In looking at the issues that I think, when you said, what would you hope to get out of it, or what would we look at? In listening to some of the issues regarding noise, visual, and safety, I can say that, maybe the best thing, maybe a good option is, instead of a chain link fence, maybe instead of a 7-foot fence, we have a 7-foot concrete wall. And that can be done in decorative tones and whatnot. I think, so that might impact the visual impact of it. Also potentially the noise. I'm not a sound room expert, but that might take care of some of the noise issues. In addition, again, provide more security. Outside of that, I agree with the road access. I was not in favor of taking a future road coming down from the north. But as far as security, I wouldn't see any harm in just a simple, gate, right when it kind of enters their property. Because I think there is a point, if it is an open access road to go to the north, to the background, to the parking lot on the north side, why couldn't they just put in a key code gate, a sliding gate? A lot of people do it right at their own homes. So I think there's things that they could certainly do to maybe help that security issue without too much cost, or without at least being a complete eyesore to the general public. But we would certainly, take another, provide maybe some more guidance and some more input.
Appreciate it.
Isn't what we're approving today approving a preliminary plat anyways?
It is a preliminary plat.
So in the preliminary plat process, it is merely preliminary. We're obligated to give feedback. We can give ideas on what the final will look like. We just can't change it a whole bunch. Like, we can't, when a council gives a preliminary approval, it's approval in concept, but there's some gravity to that, because in order to have this go through final approval, Wright Hennepin is gonna have to spend some money, and so tonight is not final approval. Tonight is preliminary approval. And I think if we put in language, because we have asked for different ideas surrounding sound, making it soundproof or resistant, and ideas around screening to other applicants in the past. And that will be part of the final plat. We have until, we have a collaborative process in that part where we have some back and forth. We can have another meeting where it's concept, this is the concept, what do you guys think of it?
Right.
We don't necessarily need to send it back to planning to get that. We have that back and forth, because this is just preliminary.
Right.
So,
Well, John, could we put language in there that's, I guess, somehow conditioning that, certain issue will be determined at final plat? Whether it's the wall or fence or whatever that's going to be, things like that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The standard for final plat review is going to be whether it complies substantially with the preliminary plat. So what you can't do is substantially change the game between those two steps. However, if there are certain aspects, we want to see a different kind of fencing, things like that, that can be addressed and kind of finalized, perfected for the final plat version, you certainly can do that. We have to stay within our authority that the code gives us. We can't demand things that aren't required within the code. And it does, and again, when you come back at final plat, you can't add on, as Mr. Boswell mentioned, a whole bunch of brand new things, but if you're contemplating them now and saying we're going to talk about the details of what this looks like and it's within the parameters of code, you absolutely can do it.
So what would we need to do in terms of amending this resolution to give us that leeway on, I'll go back to the example of the fencing.
It would depend on what you want to add.
Right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
One thing we might think about, 5E currently says the color and style of the fence slats must be approved by city staff. You could redline that and change it to a different kind of fencing. For example, you might make it something like the color and style of the decorative concrete wall must be approved at final plat. If you wanted to make that a requirement, and we agreed on that.
can we require a 7-foot wall
That's what I don't.
if we don't require a 7-foot wall in any other property? Can we can we codify something in a preliminary app that has to be on the final app if we don't actually have that anywhere in the code?
No, a good question. No, and Mr. I think it's fencing is what the code requires, correct? It's not, it doesn't contemplate a wall, is that correct?
Correct, it does, but the standard by which all essential services are applied just leaves it open-ended to be screened. So there is some leeway in there. The wall may be a little bit over the top with the requirements that are in the screening section of the code, which is typically with fencing. So I'd direct more towards cedar-style fencing, or maybe a heftier fence, but staying within fencing if possible, because the walls are.
You can't call it a concrete fence? I'm
That's
sorry.
what's considered in code.
Decorative concrete. I'm frustrated because we'll put a 3-foot berm and a 4-foot chain link with some slats in. It doesn't look good in my mind, and
You could
especially for
certainly
this.
broaden the condition to say that screening, and not specify it to a specific form to come back at final plat, but say the applicant shall work with city staff to come up with a fence or wall solution to be reviewed and approved by city council at final plat, or something along those lines, to leave it so that this can be revisited further after the applicant and city staff has looked at other options.
We have until the 31st to action the preliminary plat.
Correct.
So personally, I don't really want to get into what color fence and whatnot we have tonight.
agree.
I'd rather go with your opinion and say, kick it back to the planning commission, let them have a crack at it, and then bring it back to us. Because we have 2 meetings, right, in May, that we can talk about this.
We do. We have a meeting on May 12th and a meeting on May 26th.
So I think we have time to address that.
Are you looking to bring it back to the April 7th Planning Commission meeting, or are we looking to bring it to the
I
May?
mean, we can bring it to the
May.
earliest one possible.
Okay, April 2nd.
It has a pretty extensive schedule, but we certainly could do that.
Yeah, I think it gets a little tight if we go out to the May one.
Yep.
And maybe if we just have, you and I can maybe go over a handful of items that we'd like the planning commission to go into. So is that, where are we all on that?
I mean,
Does that affect, I know that there's a limit in terms of how long we can last with the existing substation in terms of capacity for power. We have our 60-day requirement, but there's a practical limit too. Is there time for that before we start to compromise power supply?
I don't think a month is gonna, or two is gonna cause rolling blackouts in the city of Corcoran. But honestly, the preliminary plat process, though, if you don't get it right by preliminary plat, then that is, some people's point, final plats kind of feels like a rubber stamp. So I'd rather spend the time now, get it right, than push something forward tonight.
Mr. Mayor? if
Yeah.
I may. One possible solution to kind of add to what was brought up by Councilmember Nichols and then Mr. Shea would be that tweaking of provision 5E, where it says the color and style of the fence. If the fence is the primary concern, you could change that to the color, style, and type of screening would have to be approved by city staff and put that issue off. You can have some discussions in the interim and then decide that.
Could we do something like that, actually, still send it to planning commission to discuss, and then it's determined by staff or by council approval at the next, at a subsequent meeting? Could we still give, with those changes, preliminary approval, send it to planning commission just as a discussion, and then based off of that, make our final decision?
You could, I mean, I think in either case, sending it back to planning, whether it's preliminary, a second time before that, or pre-final, I think either way, it would be an additional
Yep.
time. So you could do it in either scenario.
Well, because there's some time built into, dates here.
And I think one item would be, I believe they will be coming in with the preliminary, or the final plat application at some point. I don't know that we've received that yet.
I don't believe we have, my understanding was the intent was to do that at the end of April.
So, I mean, if we were very tight on the turnaround, we could do April 7th planning and April 14th council meeting or by that meeting to have the decisions made on some of the stuff we're tossing around.
In the interest of time for the planning commission, since they've already had the public hearing and we've listened to public comment today, is there a way we could focus them and take up less time and not occupy 2 hours of public hearing and those kind of things?
Yeah, I wouldn't think it has to go back to another public hearing necessarily.
Yeah, I think we've met the requirements for the public hearing. It's just a matter of, on that April Planning Commission, there, I think, are 7 or 8 different items that they
Yeah.
are reviewing. So just knowing that that's on there, those are other items that do have a timeline as well and have public hearing notices completed.
And by no means, folks, I don't want to stifle anybody, you can only beat a dead horse for so long. I just think we've aired our dirty laundry, all of the comments enough this evening and stuff. I want to be respectful to all, but I think there's time where we've got to make calls.
So we have the two options then. We can send it back fully to planning and then to a subsequent council meeting between now and when the deadline is, or we could make a change to the resolution, like John kind of touched on, specifically 5E, changing it to something like the color and style of the screening. So it gives us more room to work on what exactly that fencing is. Must be approved by city staff. Then we can go to the planning commission, have them give feedback on that, and in that following, have staff technically make that call? I don't know.
I'd make a motion to send it back to the planning commission for their comment
Okay.
first.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
All right, so Planning on April 7th. Maybe you and I can meet and try to hammer out some specific points. Maybe Mr. Jacobs, we could meet as well.
Yep.
Kind of go over what some good points would be. Okay. There we go. Now it's been a couple hours. Do we want to take a 5-minute break here between this and Cook Lake?
I think so.
Okay, perfect.
Recording stopped.
We'll adjourn for 5 minutes, or 10 minutes, whatever.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.